Hey there everyone, it's Brendan here from Crypto 101, and did you know that the crypto market is recovering a lot stronger than most people anticipated? Now I know what you're thinking, you're saying how in the world could this be possible if most cryptocurrencies haven't even recovered to the price that they were at before the market crash? And that's what I want to talk about in today's video here, because what we have is a bunch of stuff happening behind the scenes, a bunch of catalysts in action that's actually causing the crypto market to be really bullish here. And that's what I want to talk about in today's video. Now, there is a single caveat. There is a single red flag that I think everyone needs to be watching out for. And that's what we're going to mention towards the end of this video. So make sure you stick around for the entire thing. And if you like the content that we make over here, the only thing that we ask is that you consider hitting that like button, that subscribe button, and checking out some of the links in the description down below. Now, let's go ahead and talk about what caused this market crash in the first place before we talk about all these bullish catalysts that are happening behind the scenes and how the crypto market could be at a beautiful dip buying opportunity down here. So first things first here, it was actually not a single event. A lot of people are looking at this saying, oh, it was all Japan. But really what it was an accumulation of different events happening in the background. Now, around Wednesday of last week is when the first events started taking place. We started seeing over the course of Wednesday, Thursday, Friday in the U.S. markets, PMI numbers get to about the worst spot that they've been in roughly the last 8 months. This represents about 10% of the U.S. economy. We also saw that unemployment was on the rise. The Fed was not cutting rates. Inflation's not necessarily exactly where we want it to be yet. And people were just getting frustrated with the U.S. economy and the traditional indices like NASDAQ and S&P and other things like that. Now, on the Japanese side, what we saw was them actually try to go from a 0% interest rate to a 1% or even into a 2% interest rate. But it looks like they wanted to actually go for a hike here. Now, this is a big deal because the U.S. and Japanese economies are closely tied. A lot of U.S. businesses and wealthy people, they look at the Japanese economy with their very low and competitive interest rates, and they go over there to borrow large amounts of money and essentially get levered up. And then they play the spreads between the Japanese interest rates and what they're borrowing and U.S. treasuries and bonds and other assets in those kind of classes. And so if the interest rate, let's just say, was 0 and they were able to get a 5% yield in the United States through some of these safe conventional methods, then they were making the spread between the 0 and 5%, assuming that that's the numbers that they got. But it was along those tracks. And so when that's not going to happen anymore, because Japan wants to hike interest rates to essentially reduce or hope to reduce inflation, the Japanese markets responded very negatively, and they crashed about 13%, which is the worst that they have seen in a single day since, I think it was in the last 40 or 50 years. And so what we saw there was, we look at the Japanese yen or the US dollar compared to the yen, this thing had also been really strong. So not only were people making about this spread of 0% to maybe around 5%, they were continually making more and more money and levering up, but also the US dollar continued to appreciate in comparison to the yen. So now all of a sudden they went from having to essentially pay less on those loans to now having to pay more, and then on top of that also getting hit with interest now. And so this caused kind of a fiasco in the TradFi markets. And if you're wondering why this directly affects crypto, I want to go ahead and explain that as well, because what this did is this made investors a little bit nervous and scared, because for quite a long time now, investors have been doing this, and it's been a fairly safer way to make money. And with this kind of change, and with the markets pulling back, not liking this news, it made most mainstream investors want to be more risk off. They wanted to reduce risk in light of all this news. So Japan started reducing, or a lot of Japanese investors and US investors started reducing risk. We saw a lot of the Asia markets pulling back. We saw the US markets pulling back as well. And thus, with people wanting to reduce risk across the board of the TradFi markets, in periods of high volatility, it will affect the crypto markets as well. Now, the key there is the high volatility, and that's exactly what we saw if we look at things like NASDAQ. Kind of falling from around this local high of 21,000 all the way down to a low of 17,000. And thus, one of the only markets that could have reacted to this news over the weekend, because that's when most of it was happening, was the crypto markets. Now, The good news here, and this is something that I found a lot of reassurance in, is that this dump, this quote unquote crash or black swan event, whatever we want to call it, it had little to nothing to do with the crypto markets. They were just, unfortunately, one of the only markets that was available over the weekend. And so people said, how can I get exposure to all the stuff that's happening in the TradFi space or in the tech space and along those sort of lines? And they looked at the crypto markets and said, aha, you're a 24/7 market. I can go and get negative exposure to you, and that'll help. And that's exactly what a lot of these people did. Now, if you haven't noticed, the crypto market is recovering very, very strongly off this low after falling from around 70K all the way down to around 48, 49K down here. We've already seen Bitcoin recovering from 49K all the way back up to a local high of 62,000, almost 63,000, currently sitting at around $60,000. So it's already recovered about 23+% off the lows. We can look at some of these other crypto assets like Solana, which has covered even more off the lows. It's up about 38% locally. And from the high, it was about a 50% recovery. And so now what we are seeing here is that the crypto markets are very comfortable. And again, the big reason why this is happening is because this really had nothing to do with them in the first place. And the only reason that they were so extended to the downside is because people wanted exposure to the TradFi markets. As soon as they opened up, as soon as this week started going and those TradFi investors were able to, trade or manage their traditional assets, the crypto markets recovered quite strongly. So that's catalyst number one. The crypto markets are recovering in a lot better manner than people expected because this had little to do with crypto in the first place and very much almost everything to do with the traditional markets. The other thing that we kind of saw here is that the Bank of Japan essentially came out over here and was like, well, actually, we might not reduce interest rates after seeing the reaction. Their big kind of quote here was saying, hey, if there is uncertainty and unstable market conditions, then we don't really want to affect the interest rates. And I think that what they did is they saw Sunday night and Monday's reaction to this, and they're like, well, maybe we won't do it yet, but we are thinking about it once the market gets more stable. So everything started recovering here in light of that news, saying, hey, they're not really going to be getting too aggressive yet. They want the market to be in a more stable condition, which it very clearly is not at the moment from the way that everything reacted to this news. And so the Bank of Japan was essentially walking back on their statement to hike interest rates and be more aggressive with the stance to get to their 2% inflation target, thus making investors, including crypto investors, want to be a little bit more risk on in their approach again. So we saw a big recovery here. Something other that I think is definitely worth noting over here is the fact that with this most recent move in Bitcoin getting back above $60,000, this puts Bitcoin back inside of its upwards channel, its upwards trend. Now, I don't think it's all going to be, sunshine and rainbows from here. I don't think we're going to be at new all-time highs next week or anything like that. I think we got a little bit more choppiness. There's a lot of factors at play here. But this is certainly a good thing for Bitcoin. People are looking at this and saying, hey, this is a great recovery. Bitcoin's kind of back into the 60K range. And the other thing that I think a lot of people are missing here is that if we zoom out on a candle chart and we look at this from a little bit of a zoomed out approach, this actually just looks like one giant bull flag for Bitcoin. We've had this huge move up, and now we are just seeing lower highs and lower lows in the form of a parallel channel. And after we see a parallel channel after a move to the upside, this is oftentimes referred to as a bull flag, which is a bullish candle chart formation right here. So this is one of the big things that I've been noticing, especially with Bitcoin bouncing off the bottom of this flag, the 50-week moving average, and a couple of other things around this area. This is convincing. Now, if you don't know, this is also the area where Bitcoin previously rejected. So this means that a previous form of macro resistance right around 49,000 has turned into a new primary area of support. So this is very big resistance turning into a very big support level, and that is also a very good sign for the crypto markets. So from a technical perspective, we're seeing quite a few good things over here. This is the signs that we want to see. It looks like some bearish momentum could be drying up over here, a lot of the really crazy stuff at least. Again, that's not to say that we can't chop around. I think that we certainly can chop around. It's very possible that we might even go back into the 50s for a little bit. However, I think people are looking at this a little bit worse than it actually is. Now, what else is happening over here? Well, in news, more and more people are looking at the crypto markets and saying, hey, we want to essentially integrate this. Now, Russia is just the next one on the list here saying, hey, we want to legalize Bitcoin and cryptocurrency mining. This is just another example of a rather mainstream government saying, we want to get on this crypto action. We don't want to ban it. We don't want to kind of prohibit it. We want to allow it. So this is just another example of that. We've seen big pushes for this kind of stuff happening in the United States with softer crypto regulation, kind of incentivizing people to get more involved with it. And this is just another example of that kind of news. Now, I did talk about one potential red flag that I think people need to watch out for, and this is it. The crypto exchange FTX, which most of us have heard about, it's one of the biggest financial collapses and fiascos in history. They are set to pay. They're ordered to pay $12.7 billion to their customers, and this will likely be happening. Again, there's no hard date yet. I wish that there was. There's no hard date from what I've been able to find so far as to when this will happen, but from what I'm hearing, this could happen as early as before the end of this year in 2024. So if this starts getting paid out, then what we could see over here is people getting back billions of dollars that they lost, and this could cause people to sell. We've seen similar stuff happen recently with the US selling Bitcoin and Germany selling Bitcoin and Mt. Gox people trying to sell Bitcoin that they've gotten back. And this could be another one of those events. And it really does feel like the bears are trying to do everything that they can to suppress price. And the fact that Bitcoin is still holding up at $60,000 after all of this is quite almost comedic in my opinion, because it's really not crashing too drastically in light of all of these different events, which should impact it, a little bit more negatively, yet Bitcoin is still holding up over here. Now, the final thing that I saw over here is that Solana continues to impress. It's a crypto that we talk about quite frequently over here, but Solana has officially flipped Ethereum in 24-hour DEX volume. Now, it's done this quite a bit this year. It's one of the things that we've been watching out for. We've actually talked to the Solana team a number of times over here at Crypto 101. And last week, for all of you members that are Crypt Nation members, we actually had a Solana coin of the week. We've been watching this. We've been watching the Solana ecosystem actually outperform things like Ethereum over here. If we look at this chart, we can see that Solana has been outperforming Ethereum for quite some time, remaining quite strong against it, especially in recent weeks since about June. And even compared to Bitcoin, Solana has been remaining quite strong over here as well, especially since the market kind of pivoted back in 2023. But in recent weeks, we've seen the Solana dominance turning around, and we actually offered a coin of the week announcement for the Solana ecosystem, and that was Helium. So if we look back on Monday when we announced this, Helium recovered quite well off the lows. It's a crypto project that we've been watching. It's in the Solana ecosystem and directly has exposure to DePIN, or decentralized physical infrastructure, which is the vertical of something like Helium. And so since that point, since Monday when we were writing the coin of the week for Helium, it's up about 72%. Now, the reason that I bring this up is because we're going to be running a promotion right now for anyone that wants to join Crypt Nation, a trial. You can check it out for yourself. And we publish these kind of coin of the weeks every single week in our weekly newsletter, where we talk about all different sorts of market news and ecosystem dives and a bunch of great material. And that's always accompanied by a coin of the week pick and Bitcoin analysis as well. So if you aren't plugged into a really good cryptocurrency community, we got one over here called Crypt Nation. I'm going to have a link to it in the description down below, where you can check out the trial for yourself and see if it's something that interests you. But I'm one of the lead analysts over there, and I have a great time with it, and I love being able to interact with everyone as well. So that's going to round us up for this video, everyone. I hope that all of you did enjoy. If you did, again, all that we ask here is that maybe you hit the like button, you hit the subscribe button, you check out some of those links in the description down below. And with that being said, everyone, we're going to bring this video to an end, and we'll see all of you at the same time, same place next week.